I always thought of my life as a pretty straightforward one. I married Lisa 3 years ago after a whirlwind romance that seemed like a fairy tale. She was charming, smart, and had a smile that could light up the darkest of days. We lived in a cozy apartment in Denver, had a small group of close friends, and I was working as a graphic designer while she pursued her career in marketing. Life was good, or so I thought. But even in the happiest of times, there were subtle signs that things weren't quite right. At first, I noticed Lisa being a bit more distant. She'd come home late from work occasionally, saying she had to stay for meetings or client dinners. I brushed it off as part of her job. Then, she started going on weekend trips with her friends. She claimed it was a much-needed escape from her hectic schedule. I didn't think much of it but felt a slight pang of discomfort. Why were we not doing things together anymore? One day, while cleaning out the storage closet, I stumbled upon a receipt for a fancy hotel in Aspen. The date on it was the weekend she had told me she was at a friend's cabin. I remember my heart racing. I confronted her, but she brushed it off easily, spinning an elaborate story about a last-minute getaway with her colleagues for a team-building exercise. The way she laughed it off made it seem ridiculous, but my gut told me something was off. Then came the tennis coach, Tom. Lisa had started taking tennis lessons a few months back. At first, I thought it was a great idea. She wanted to get fit and enjoy a new hobby. But as the lessons progressed, I could see a change in her demeanor. She was more confident, more energized. I picked up on it. She was talking about Tom incessantly, how he was such a great coach, how he pushed her to do better. I was happy for her but couldn't shake the feeling that her enthusiasm was bordering on infatuation. The turning point came one fateful Thursday evening. I had planned to surprise Lisa with dinner at her favorite restaurant, but when I arrived home early, I noticed her car wasn't in the driveway. My gut twisted, and so I called her. She answered with a hesitant, "Hey." "Babe," that felt rehearsed. When I asked where she was, she paused before saying she was out with friends. Red flags were flying, and I could feel anger boiling inside of me. I decided to take a drive, thinking I'd clear my mind. As I cruised around the neighborhood, I found myself near the tennis courts. It was an impulse decision that would change everything. I parked the car and walked towards the courts, intending to just watch the kids play. But to my shock and horror, there was Lisa, laughing and flirting with Tom. They were close, too close for comfort. She was leaning in, her laughter ringing through the air while Tom continuously brushed his hand on her back. I stood there frozen, my heart racing and my mind reeling. I could hardly believe what I was witnessing. The woman I loved was wrapped up in another man, and it was painfully clear. She was not just having a casual lesson. I felt a whirlwind of emotions, betrayal, anger, sadness. It was all too much. I turned on my heel and walked back to my car, my mind racing faster than my feet could carry me. When I got home, Lisa had returned, blissfully unaware of what I had seen. I confronted her with the evidence I now had in my mind, a cold, hard truth that I couldn't shake. I demanded to know the truth, and for a moment she looked scared. But then she switched into defense mode, denying any wrongdoing, claiming it was all innocent, just tennis, and that I was being paranoid. The way she spoke made me feel small, and I realized in that moment that I had never felt more alone, even with her standing right in front of me. The emotional impact was devastating. I felt like my entire world had crumbled. The woman I had trusted, confided in, and built a life with was lying to my face. The anger coursed through me like a river, but the sadness was an anchor pulling me under. I was drowning in a sea of betrayal. I knew I had a decision to make. I could either fight for a marriage that felt shattered or walk away and find something better for myself. I had to decide whether her lies were worth enduring or whether I would take control of my life again. I wanted to be stronger, to prove to myself that I wouldn't let this destroy me. I didn't know what my next steps would be, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to be the victim here. I was going to show Lisa the consequences of her actions. What I didn't know at the time was that this betrayal would ignite something deep within me, a fire that would lead me to pursue my dreams in a way I never imagined. I was about to take the first steps towards becoming a professional tennis player. After that night, everything changed. I felt like I had stepped into a different life, one where I was no longer just a graphic designer but a man on a mission. The betrayal stung, but it also fueled a fire within me. I was determined to channel my anger into something productive, something that would not only help me heal but also prove to Lisa that she had made a monumental mistake. I didn't want to wallow in despair. I wanted to rise from the ashes of my shattered marriage like a phoenix. I started hitting the tennis courts every day. At first, it was to blow off steam. I would swing my racket with all the pent-up frustration I had bottled inside. I started taking lessons myself, not just for exercise, but to learn the game in a way I had never done before. The rhythmic sound of the ball striking the racket became a form of therapy for me. Each hit was a release, each serve an assertion of my newfound strength. I was lucky enough to find a local coach, Mark, who recognized my passion and quickly molded my raw emotion into skill. He could see how determined I was. I trained rigorously, waking up early for runs, practicing my serves, and focusing on my footwork. I wanted to be good, not just for myself, but as a testament to what Lisa had thrown away. I had to be more than just a husband. I wanted to be a competitor. My friends noticed the change in me. I was no longer the quiet, reserved guy who would let things slide. I started sharing my journey with them, including the story of Lisa's betrayal. When I spoke about it, I felt empowered. Their support was overwhelming. They encouraged me to enter local tournaments, to test my skills against others. Initially, I was hesitant, but the excitement of competition began to draw me in. The thought of standing on that court, the crowd cheering, ignited a thrill I hadn't felt in years. As I started competing, I quickly realized that I had a natural talent for the game. I began winning matches. The adrenaline rush of competition was unlike anything I had experienced before. With each victory, I felt more like the man I wanted to be, confident, strong, and unyielding. I joined a local tennis club where I met other players, some of whom were as passionate about the sport as I was. It was a refreshing change from the life I had been leading, filled with deceit and disappointment. Lisa, on the other hand, was gradually catching wind of my transformation. I remember one evening when she called me, sounding more desperate than usual. She wanted to talk, to meet up, to figure things out. I could hear the anxiety in her voice. She wanted to pretend that everything was fine, that we could go back to the way things were. But how could we? I was no longer that man. I had taken the first steps toward becoming someone new. When we finally met, she was dressed in a way that was reminiscent of our earlier days together. She wore the same perfume I used to love, and for a moment I felt the old emotions creeping back in. But then I remembered the betrayal, the way she had laughed with Tom, the lies she had told. I felt a surge of resolve wash over me. I needed to stand my ground. "Lisa, I'm not the same person anymore," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I've been working hard on myself, and I'm not sure where you fit into that picture anymore." She looked taken aback, her expression shifting from confusion to irritation. "You can't be serious. You're just going to throw away everything we built because of a stupid mistake." A stupid mistake. The nerve. I took a deep breath to center myself. "You call it a mistake, Lisa. I call it betrayal. You chose to cheat on me with my coach. You broke my trust, and I can't just forget that." Her facade began to crack. She tried to defend herself, claiming it was just a fling, that it meant nothing. But her words felt hollow, like she was trying to convince herself more than me. I realized in that moment that I had already moved on mentally, if not physically. There was no point in rekindling a romance that had burnt too bright and too fast, only to be reduced to ashes by her actions. The conversation ended with Lisa pleading for another chance, but deep down, I knew there was no going back. I had been given a harsh lesson in love and trust, and I wasn't willing to put myself back in that situation. I walked away from that meeting with a sense of freedom, a feeling that I had finally taken control. As I continued to immerse myself in tennis, I also started to think about my future. I wanted to go pro. I began researching what it would take, the competitions I could enter, and how to get sponsorships. I set lofty goals for myself and imagined the day when I would step onto a larger court, facing off against more seasoned players, all while knowing that I had turned a negative experience into a powerful motivator. The more I trained, the more I realized how much I truly loved the sport. It wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming my life, about proving to myself that I was worth more than the lies Lisa had fed me. I was ready to make a name for myself, not just in tennis, but in my life as a whole. Lisa had underestimated me, and I was determined to show her and everyone else just how wrong they were. Months rolled by as I threw myself deeper into my training. The initial shock of Lisa's betrayal had faded, replaced by an intense focus on my goals. I was no longer just hitting the courts. I was making a real commitment to my future. The more I dedicated myself to tennis, the more I felt a sense of purpose that I hadn't experienced in years. I started entering local tournaments, gaining momentum with each match I played. I remember my first competition vividly. It was a small event, but it felt monumental. The energy in the air was electric as I stepped onto the court, a palpable mix of nerves and excitement thrumming through me. I could hear the cheers from the crowd, and as I took my place on the opposite side of the net, I felt a surge of adrenaline. I wasn't just playing to win, I was playing to reclaim my life. The first match was intense, each point fought for with determination. I faced off against a solid opponent who had more experience than I did, but I was relentless. Every time he scored, I felt the fire within me ignite even more. I wanted to win not just for me, but to show everyone watching, especially Lisa, that I was no longer the man who would stand idly by while my heart was trampled. I won that match, and it was a high that I chased for weeks. The feeling of triumph was exhilarating. The more tournaments I entered, the more confident I became. I started to gain a reputation in the local tennis community. People began to notice my skills, my determination, and my passion for the sport. It was empowering, transforming me into a version of myself I never knew existed. But as I basked in my newfound success, Lisa began to rear her head again. She would send me texts, sometimes heartfelt, sometimes desperate. She knew I was getting stronger both mentally and physically, and it seemed to frighten her. I could sense her jealousy creeping in as she watched me thrive from afar. One evening, she messaged me asking if we could meet again. She insisted she wanted to apologize properly, to explain herself fully. I hesitated, but a part of me, the part that wanted closure, agreed. When we finally met, I could see the anxiety etched on her face. It was a stark contrast to the confident woman who had laughed with Tom months prior. She began by apologizing, claiming she had been confused and made poor choices. "I never meant to hurt you, Jason," she said, her voice trembling. "I was just caught up in the moment, and I know that doesn't excuse what I did." I listened, trying to suppress the anger that surged within me. I had half a mind to walk away, but I wanted to hear her out. "Why should I believe anything you say now?" I challenged her. "You had every opportunity to be honest with me, to be the woman I thought I married, yet you chose deceit." Her eyes filled with tears, and for a second I thought I might feel sympathy. But the betrayal was too fresh, too raw. I couldn't return to that place. "You think this will fix everything," I said. "You've shown me who you are, Lisa, and I can't just forget that." She tried to reach out for me, as if to touch my arm, but I flinched away. It was a powerful reminder of how far apart we had grown. "I need you to understand that I've changed," she insisted, her voice breaking. "I've been doing a lot of thinking. I want to be with you again to make things right." I shook my head, the weight of her words heavy yet hollow. "You don't get to decide that anymore. I've found something that makes me happy, something that gives me purpose, and it's not you." It felt liberating to say those words out loud. In that moment, I knew I was no longer the man who would accept betrayal without consequence. She left, tears streaming down her cheeks, and I felt a strange mix of emotions. Part of me felt pity for her, but the larger part felt relief. I had closed the door on that chapter of my life, and it felt good to take control of my narrative. I could focus entirely on my tennis career and my personal growth. As the months wore on, I started gaining traction in the local tennis scene. I entered more advanced tournaments, catching the eyes of scouts who were looking for promising players. I was invited to participate in larger competitions, and with each victory, my confidence grew. I was becoming a player who could compete with the best, and it thrilled me. It was during one of these larger tournaments that I bumped into Tom, my ex-coach and Lisa's affair partner. He was there to support another player who had been training with him. I felt a surge of resentment as I saw him cheering from the sidelines. He didn't know that I had become a formidable opponent, a player he would soon have to face. After my match, which I had won handily, I found myself walking towards the exit when I noticed him waiting for me outside the court. I could feel my heart racing, a mix of adrenaline and anger rushing through me. As I approached him, a strange peace settled in. I was no longer the man who had been wronged, I was a competitor. "Hey, Jason," he said, his tone casual. "Nice match out there, you've improved a lot." I stared at him, my expression unwavering. "Thanks, Tom, I guess this sport has a way of shaping a person." He raised an eyebrow, perhaps feeling the weight of my words. "You know, Lisa talks about you a lot, she regrets what happened." The words dripped with insincerity and I couldn't help but laugh. Well, she should. But I've moved on to bigger and better things. His smile faltered, and for a moment I reveled in the knowledge that I was no longer a victim trapped in a web of deceit. I was taking charge of my life, and I would make sure he remembered that. I walked away, feeling lighter, liberated from the chains of my past. My journey was just beginning, and while I had encountered obstacles along the way, I was determined to succeed, to prove that Lisa had made a grave mistake. I was no longer just playing tennis. I was fighting for my future, reclaiming my life and ready to show the world my worth. As my tennis career took off, I found myself in a whirlwind of activity. Tournaments came and went, each one adding to my growing reputation. I began to see the fruits of my labor. I was not just competing, I was winning. With each victory, the thrill of the game electrified me, and the pain of my past slowly began to fade. I was becoming someone new, someone I was proud of. The more successful I became, the more I caught the attention of sponsors. I remember sitting in a coffee shop one afternoon when my phone buzzed with a notification. It was an email from a sports brand interested in sponsoring me. My heart raced as I read through the details. This was a significant step forward, an opportunity to not only take my tennis to the next level, but also to solidify my place in the sport. I could hardly believe it, but I knew I had earned every bit of it through hard work and relentless determination. I signed the sponsorship deal and excitedly shared the news with my friends. They were thrilled for me, showering me with support and encouragement. It felt surreal to think that I had gone from the depths of betrayal to being a sponsored athlete, chasing my dreams full throttle. I was on the cusp of something great, and I could feel it in my bones. But with success came challenges. I started facing tougher opponents, players who had been in the game longer and had established themselves as formidable competitors. Each match felt like a test, not only of my skills but of my mental fortitude. I had to remind myself why I started this journey in the first place, to prove to myself, to Lisa, and to everyone who had doubted me that I was capable of greatness. One particular match stands out in my mind. It was a regional championship against a player named Brian who had a reputation for being ruthless on the court. The atmosphere was electric and the stakes were high. As I warmed up, I could see my friends in the stands, their cheers fueling my determination. I was ready to show them and myself just how far I had come. The match started, and from the first serve, I could tell it was going to be a battle. Brian was skilled, his serves powerful and precise. But I had trained for this moment. I had endured the pain of betrayal and transformed it into strength. Each point fought felt like a reflection of my journey, and I channeled every ounce of emotion I had into my game. As the match progressed, I found myself in a fierce back-and-forth with Brian. His confident smirks only added fuel to my fire. I refused to back down. As the final set neared its climax, I could feel the tension building, not just from the crowd, but from within me. It was more than a game. It was a testament to my growth, to my strength, and to the woman who had underestimated me. In a pivotal moment, I managed to break Brian's serve. The crowd erupted in cheers, and I could feel the adrenaline surging through my veins. I rallied hard, focusing on my strengths, pulling from the depths of my training. I was on the verge of victory, and I could almost taste it. When I finally secured the match point, a mix of joy and disbelief washed over me. I had done it. I had beaten Brian, and I had proven to myself that I was more than a victim of infidelity. The moment was bittersweet. I felt exhilarated, yet reflective. I had fought hard to get here, and I wanted to scream my victory to the world. After the match, I was flooded with congratulations from my friends, coaches, and even fans. The trophy I held felt solid in my grasp, a symbol of my hard work and resilience. But amidst the celebration, I couldn't help but think of Lisa. I had put her behind me, but it was hard to ignore the fact that she had once been a significant part of my life. I wondered how she felt now, watching from the sidelines as I thrived without her. Days later, while I was still riding the high of my victory, Lisa reached out again. This time her message was more direct. "Can we talk? I've been following your journey and I'm really proud of you," she wrote. At first I felt a rush of indignation. Proud of me? Where had that pride been when she chose to betray me? But I was also curious. I needed to know what this was all about. After some contemplation, I agreed to meet her. I wanted to see for myself if she truly understood the consequences of her actions. We met at a cafe, and as soon as I saw her, I noticed how different she looked. She seemed anxious, fidgeting with her coffee cup as if searching for the right words. The familiar pang of nostalgia hit me, but I quickly pushed it aside. This wasn't about the past, it was about the present. "Jason, I've been following your matches," she started, her voice trembling. "You've become incredible, and I can't believe how much you've grown. I know I messed up, and I'm really sorry." I studied her carefully, searching for any hint of sincerity. "You're right, you did mess up, but do you really think an apology is going to change anything?" She sighed, her eyes downcast. "No, I know I can't change the past. I just want you to know that I regret my decisions, and I've been working on myself. You deserve someone who supports you, and I haven't been that person." I felt a mix of emotions, anger, pity, and a strange sense of closure. "Lisa, you had your chance, you made your choices, and I've moved on. I'm not the same person I was when we were together. I won't go back to that." Her eyes filled with tears, and I felt a pang of sympathy for her pain. "I know it's selfish, but I see how happy you are now, and I just wish I could be a part of that. I wish I could go back and make things right." "I appreciate you saying that, but I can't let you back in. I've built something new for myself, and I'm not willing to risk it again." I could see the realization dawn on her face, and it hurt to deliver that blow, but I had to be firm. I had worked too hard to reclaim my life to let her back in. As we parted ways, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I had acknowledged our past, but it was time to step into my future without any shadows lingering behind me. That meeting brought me a sense of closure that I didn't know I needed. I was no longer tied to the emotional baggage of our relationship. I was free to pursue my dreams without looking back. With renewed focus, I dove back into my training, determined to continue climbing the ranks. The thrill of competition, the excitement of matches, it all became my new reality. I was no longer the man who had been cheated on. I was a competitor who was forging a path toward greatness. The future was bright, and I was ready to seize every opportunity that came my way. As my tournament schedule filled up, I could hardly believe how far I had come in such a short time. Each match I played was a stepping stone, not just in the realm of tennis, but in my personal growth. The thrill of competing saturated my life with a sense of purpose that was intoxicating. I had transitioned from the broken husband who had been deceived to a driven athlete on the path to success. After winning the regional championship, I was invited to a prestigious national tournament. This was a big deal, a chance to showcase my skills on a larger stage. I was excited but also anxious. Competing against some of the best players in the country would be a true test. I could feel the pressure building, but instead of succumbing to it, I embraced it. I had faced my demons. This was just another challenge to conquer. In the lead up to the tournament, I trained harder than ever. My coach, Mark, pushed me to refine my skills, work on my strategies, and maintain my mental focus. We watched videos of potential opponents, analyzing their playing styles and weaknesses. Every detail mattered. I was determined to leave no stone unturned. As the tournament approached, the buzz around my participation grew. Friends, family, and even some fans began to rally around me. I appreciated their support, but deep down, I knew that this journey was about more than just winning. It was about proving to myself that I could rise above adversity. The day of the tournament arrived, and I felt a mix of excitement and nerves as I entered the venue. The atmosphere was electric, with spectators filling the stands, eager to see the action unfold. As I walked onto the court for my first match, I took a deep breath, soaking in the moment. This was what I had worked for. This was my time to shine. My first opponent was a seasoned player, with a reputation for being fierce. The match started and I quickly fell into a rhythm. The sound of the ball hitting the court and the cheers of the crowd fueled my determination. I fought hard, each point a battle, each set a testament to my resolve. In the end, I emerged victorious, the crowd's cheers ringing in my ears. I had taken the first step towards proving myself on a national stage. As the tournament progressed, I continued to build momentum. Each match brought its own set of challenges, but I faced them head-on. I became increasingly confident in my abilities. With each victory, I felt myself growing not just as a player, but as a person. I was no longer defined by my past. I was reshaping my identity and forging my path. But then came the semifinals. My opponent was a top-ranked player, someone who had been on the circuit for years. As I prepared for the match, I felt the weight of expectations pressing down on me. Mark had been instilling confidence in me, reminding me of how far I had come. "You've got this, Jason. Just play your game," he would say. But as I stepped onto the court, I could feel my nerves bubbling to the surface. The match began, and I quickly fell behind. My opponent was relentless, his shots precise and powerful. I struggled to keep up, and I could feel my confidence wavering. But I remembered why I was here. I wasn't just playing for a trophy, I was playing for my future. I took a deep breath and fought back, employing the strategies Mark and I had practiced. The crowd began to rally behind me, sensing my determination. With each rally, I started to regain my footing. The tide began to turn. I clawed my way back into the match, forcing my opponent to play defensively. I focused on my breathing, blocking out the noise around me and zeroing in on the game. In a pivotal moment, I broke his serve and the crowd erupted. I could feel the energy shifting in my favor. With renewed strength, I pushed through the final points, my confidence surging. I could hear their cheers, the adrenaline coursing through me like a drug. When I finally secured the win, the roar of the crowd was deafening. I had made it to the finals. As I celebrated my victory, I glanced up into the stands. I spotted familiar faces, friends who had supported me throughout this journey, but among them was someone unexpected, Lisa. She sat there, a look of concern and perhaps admiration on her face. Part of me felt a rush of anger, but I pushed it aside. I had worked too hard to let her presence derail me. I was doing this for me, not for her. The finals were set for the next day, and I was filled with anticipation. I had come so far, and I was ready to give it my all. As I lay in bed that night, I reflected on my journey. I thought about all the moments of pain and heartache that had led me to this point. I realized that every struggle had shaped me into who I was now. I was no longer the broken man who had been betrayed. I was a fighter, ready to take on the world. The next day dawned bright and clear. I arrived at the venue feeling a mix of excitement and nerves. This was it, the moment I had been waiting for. I could feel the energy in the air as I prepared to face my final opponent. With each step towards the court, I felt a sense of purpose wash over me. The match was intense from the very beginning. My opponent was skilled, and I fought tooth and nail for every point. For hours, we battled it out, each of us refusing to back down. The crowd was on the edge of their seats, and I could hear my friends cheering me on. I dug deep, pulling from the well of strength I had cultivated over months of hard training. In a pivotal moment, I found myself down a set but rallied back to win the second. The final set was a test of wills, and I fought harder than I ever had in my life. With every serve, every rally, I remembered my journey, my pain, and my determination to rise above it all. Then came the moment of truth. I had match point, and the crowd erupted as I served. It was a perfect shot, and as my opponent failed to return it, the realization hit me like a wave. I had won the tournament. I had proven to myself that I could rise against all odds, that I could turn betrayal into triumph. I dropped my racket and fell to my knees, overwhelmed with emotion. The cheers echoed around me, but all I could feel was a sense of accomplishment. I had done it. I had not only reclaimed my life but had also laid the foundation for a future I had once thought was impossible. As I accepted the trophy, I looked out at the crowd, and there she was again, Lisa. In that moment, I felt a strange mix of closure and empowerment. She had witnessed my transformation, and I knew that I had become someone she could never take away from me. I had turned my pain into power, and I was ready to embrace whatever came next. The journey had only just begun. The trophy felt warm in my hands as I held it high above my head, the cheers of the crowd ringing in my ears. It was a symbol of so much more than just the match I had won. It represented my resilience, my dedication, and the ability to transform heartbreak into strength. The moment felt surreal, and as I took a deep breath, I soaked in the joy that surrounded me. In the days following the tournament, my life changed in ways I never anticipated. Media outlets wanted to interview me, local sports commentators praised my journey, and my social media following grew exponentially. People wanted to hear my story, not just about my victories on the court, but about the journey that had led me there. I was no longer just a competitor. I was an inspiration for others who had faced struggles. But amid all the excitement, I remained grounded. I knew that while I had achieved something significant, the journey ahead was just as important. I continued to train diligently, seeking to improve my game and push my limits further. Each day brought new challenges, but I welcomed them with open arms. I had learned that resilience was not just about overcoming obstacles. It was about embracing the journey itself. As for Lisa, she reached out again after the tournament. This time, her message was different. She expressed genuine admiration for my accomplishments and expressed her regret over the way things had turned out between us. She admitted that she had been following my journey closely, and while she hoped for reconciliation, she also understood the weight of her past decisions. I took my time in responding. Part of me wanted to lash out. After all, the pain she caused me was still fresh. But I also recognized that I had moved on. I had become someone who could look back without bitterness, someone who had learned valuable lessons. I replied, thanking her for her kind words but also being clear that I had no intention of reigniting the past. I was focused on building my own future, one that didn't include her. Over the next few months, I continued to rise in the world of tennis. I participated in more tournaments, each one reinforcing my skills and expanding my presence in the sport. I was even approached by a coach from a prestigious training academy who wanted to help me take my game to the next level. It was an incredible opportunity, one I couldn't pass up. With this new training, I was pushed harder than ever before. I was surrounded by talented players, each of them striving for greatness. I felt a sense of camaraderie with them, a shared understanding of the sacrifices we all made to reach our goals. The competition grew fiercer, but instead of feeling intimidated, I relished the challenge. I was no longer the underdog, I was a contender. Eventually, I found myself competing at a major national event. The stakes were higher than ever, and I was ready to prove that my earlier victories were just the beginning. As I stepped onto the court for my first match, I felt a rush of adrenaline. This was my time, my moment to shine on a larger stage. The match was a fierce battle, punctuated by powerful serves and grueling rallies. My opponent was skilled and aggressive, but I held my ground. I remembered every ounce of pain and every moment of doubt that had fueled my determination. I pushed through the exhaustion, my mind focused and clear. Each point won felt like a testament to my journey. When I finally secured the match, I collapsed onto the court, overwhelmed with emotion. The crowd erupted in cheers, and I knew this victory wasn't just mine. It was a reflection of everyone who had supported me along the way. I had transformed my pain into power, and it had led me to this moment. As I stood on the podium accepting another trophy, I felt a wave of gratitude wash over me. I had come so far, not just in tennis but in life. I had reclaimed my identity, and I was proud of the man I had become. Looking out at the crowd, I saw familiar faces, friends who had been there through it all, cheering me on. It felt surreal to know how many people believed in me, even when I struggled to believe in myself. In the days that followed, the media buzzed with stories of my rise in tennis. They celebrated my victories, but more importantly, they highlighted my journey of resilience. I began to receive messages from people who shared their own stories of overcoming adversity. It was powerful, and I realized that my experience could inspire others to rise above their struggles. While I embraced my newfound success, I also made a commitment to give back. I started working with local youth programs, teaching tennis to kids who might not have the same opportunities I had. I wanted them to know that determination could change their lives, just as it had changed mine. Seeing their smiles and enthusiasm reminded me of my own journey, and it fueled my passion even further. Months turned into a year and my career continued to flourish. I had built a life that was fulfilling, one that was driven by passion and purpose. I had faced heartbreak and betrayal but had emerged stronger and more resilient. The lens through which I viewed life had shifted. I was no longer a victim, but a warrior. Reflecting on everything that had happened, I realized that each experience had been a stepping stone toward my growth. I had learned that betrayal could either break you or build you. It was your choice. I had chosen to build myself up, to forge a path of success, and to embrace every opportunity that came my way. As I stood on the court one last time after another successful tournament, I held my racket high and felt a surge of pride. I had turned my pain into power, and I was ready for whatever the future held. I had learned to believe in myself, and I would never let anyone take that away from me again. The journey had only just begun, and I was eager to see where it would take me next.